right, well, thank you for everybody for joining today's webinar. Today we're going to talk about one of the biggest drivers in health insurance plans today, which is musculoskeletal claims or MSK claims. But more importantly, we're going to talk about some strategies employers are using today to eliminate these claims and therefore reducing surgeries, reducing days out of the office, and lowering your health insurance plan costs in the meantime. This is one of 4 sessions. We rescheduled this one, but our next one will be in May. I'll give you the date and the time towards the end of the meeting. Hopefully you've registered for those. And just some quick housekeeping items. If you're here for SHRM HRCI codes, we will show those towards the end of the presentation. Make sure you have those. And we have a question box. We have a chat box. So I would say feel free to send us questions, send us anything in the chat. We're going to have some Q&A towards the end. But if you do have questions as we go throughout this presentation, just feel free to put them in there and we'll do our best to answer. If not, we'll get towards the end. So thanks for joining today. Here's what we're going to cover, why MSK is becoming a top cost driver within health insurance plans today, where the system is breaking down with traditional care, and then ultimately a practical strategy employers are using today to reduce some of these costs. I'm your host, Mike Krupa. You know, I've been in the health insurance space now for a little over 20 years, have an actuarial background, so I take a very technical approach with my clients. I've advised on well over 300 self-funded employer health plans and about the same from a fully insured standpoint. And I did create the Remodel benefits process, which is a strategic process that I use with my clients and prospective clients to help them take control of their health insurance costs, but do it in a way that is not cutting benefits. So let's talk about the environment that we're in today. Most employers, on average, saw anywhere from an 8 to 15% increase, and that's on average. We saw employers way higher than that. We had one employer that saw a 65% increase, many that saw 40s and 30s. It was absolutely the worst renewal season in my entire career, and I would say most of the other advisors here would agree with that. So, you know, think about where you landed as an employer. I think a lot of employers today would take an 8% increase and assume that that's market trend, especially after the renewal season, we just saw. But the thing is when you dig into the data and you look at it, that's not the full story of just market increases. There are drivers within health insurance plans, and what we're going to talk about today is how to evaluate good solutions for MSK. But first, we're going to talk about the Remodel benefits framework, which is the framework to work through these solutions. It's the framework for employers to help take back control of their health insurance plans. It's a quick 3-step process. It starts with establishing control. That means collecting the data on your health insurance plan and understanding what conditions are driving your claims. It also means setting up a 3-year strategy. My most successful clients at managing their health insurance spend have all set up a 3-year strategic plan. Great tool to hold everybody accountable. And then ultimately, if you are the right candidate for it, it could be self-funding or it could just be evaluating your funding arrangement. You may be fully insured today. You may consider a level-funded solution, but if you are a good fit, self-funding will allow you to do the next 2 steps in the process. One, align your health insurance plan with partners that have your best interests in mind. This does start with your broker, understanding how they get paid, but it really gets into the individual partners within your health insurance plan. This is a step where we eliminate a lot of fraud, waste, and abuse within a health insurance plan. It's also how we evaluate vendors. And we ask a couple simple questions, right? Is your solution reducing the cost of care? How do you get paid? We want to understand how these partners get paid within within the health insurance plan, so we understand what they're incented to do. And then, do they align their compensation with what they promised? Are they offering putting their fees at risk? And then the last step of the process is reward. So, implementing new programs, none of that matters if employees don't use these programs. And so you have to figure out a way to reward members when they're making really good healthcare decisions. And we found that the best way to do that is to make things free. Let's give them a really good incentive to do the right things. So today we're going to apply this framework to one of the biggest drivers within health insurance plans today, musculoskeletal claims. The fact is that these claims today, they're accounting for 15 to 30% of total plan spend. You saw that stat on renewal increases between 8 and 15% on average. Well, MSK claims are increasing at double that pace today because younger and younger people are starting to get joint replacements. So this MSK is just those types of things: joint replacements, neck pain, back pain, but really preventable surgeries. Also things like physical therapy. I would tell you that MSK is very common to be a top 3 cost driver in most health insurance plans today, and more often I am seeing this rise to the top. And what I would tell the employers that are listening here is that if you are not actively managing your MSK spend, it is likely going to become a pretty big blind spot within your health insurance plan. And the fact is it's pretty easy to identify what your MSK spend is. And so the question then becomes, well, what's a better approach? And that's exactly why I invited Heidi. Heidi, go ahead and turn your camera on. Heidi has 22 years of experience in non-surgical orthopedics, specifically focused on preventing unnecessary surgeries. So she is exactly the person to talk about this information. Heidi, want to give you the opportunity to introduce yourself. I'd love to have the audience hear a little bit more about your background and kind of how you got to where you're at today with Aware Health and finding Aware Health.
Yeah, thank you for inviting me on this, Mike, and welcome to all of you in the audience. I just wanted to tell you a little bit more about my experience. I am truly passionate about what we're doing in the healthcare space because when I started off in academia and did research and presented it to the students I was teaching, I realized that 95% of surgeries that are wear and tear, like shoulder knee repairs, back fusions, treatment for disc herniations or pinched nerves, like most of the time, if you look at the research, those surgeries are no more effective than doing nothing at all. And so I'm like, why are members going under the risk, like going under the knife? Stuff happens, right? And then from the employer's perspective, why are they spending their company's bottom line on these surgeries that don't have any effectiveness compared to doing nothing at all on aggregate? So just super passionate about this. I've dedicated my entire professional life to this problem.
Oh, it's great to have you here today, Heidi. Definitely enjoyed working with your team so far here. Yeah, let's kind of dig in here. We talk about MSK in general. I'd love to hear from you, your perspective on when you look across your employer groups, what % of the MSK spend do you really think is avoidable?
Well, I think it depends on if you divide MSK into acute or wear and tear. The acute, I would say almost none of it is avoidable. It's like people that fall and fracture their hip, they need immediate surgery. But 80% of MSK is wear and tear. So
Okay.
that's fraying of your rotator cuff, irregularities in your joint where they want to go and clean it out. So all the wear and tear, 95% of that category can be avoided. So overall, a huge opportunity.
Yeah. Why so much of the wear and tear? Why can't it be treated without surgery?
Well, it seems logical to most people, and I think that's why it's taken so long for the traditional system to change on this. But if you take an X-ray of your knee and you see those osteophytes, where it's like bone on bone, it just makes sense if you go in and clean out the joint or clip the meniscus, it would look better on imaging, and you'd think it would make people feel better after that surgery. But there's no difference in outcomes in large systematic reviews for surgeries like meniscectomies that are degenerative. So it's like not common sense, I think.
Yeah, that's I would agree. And I mean, do you think there's anything to do with there's this instant gratification in our society too, right? And sometimes surgery feels like the quick fix as opposed to doing something else. I think people have that perception in their mind today,
Yeah, I know. Nobody wants to do the longer road that takes more effort because we're all busy and just trying to stay afloat in life, right? So I think the thing to consider though is members on plans think that surgery is a quick fix. My question is it a quick fix? You have to go to see 3-4 appointments before that surgery usually for the imaging and the prep, and then after surgery there's like 3 months of rehab after that, and you have to put your life on hold, and you usually do physical therapy as part of that afterward. So why not just do 3 visits of physical therapy on average up front and be done with the whole thing? People are getting better really fast on our platform. So I would say there's a quicker fix than what they think the quick fix is for surgery.
So, you mentioned this to me, which is why I talked about MSK inflating at twice the rate of medical inflation. What do you think is causing that today?
Well, I think it's good in a sense. People are more active as they age. So being a little more risky stuff's going to happen. But it's actually the risk of being more active is less than the risk of not being active. So I think that's a really good thing for our population. But, older adults are going to nick something, pull something when they're out and about. I think also technology is advancing where they're able to do surgeries earlier and earlier, and the system isn't necessarily incentivized to do less of them over time. So I think it's just kind of snowballed into everyone just kind of thinks quick fix, go in, get taken care of. They tell their neighbor like, oh yeah, my knee replaced, just kind of word spread. So I think it's like this massive educational campaign we're trying to run with members where it's like we have to be the most frequent evidence-based kind of whisper in their ear versus what they're hearing in their environment.
Yeah. We talk about the costs here too. Obviously on the health insurance plan, rarely do we talk about how much time people would have to actually be out of work when something like this happens, right? So there's some soft costs associated with this as well. I'm curious, as you worked across different industries, do you see any patterns there with specific industries on having higher MSK spend? Is this a problem that's across the board? Like where are you most prevalently seeing this?
Yeah, I think we get the question about industry all the time. It's like, what types of companies have the highest MSK cost? And um, it's kind of you're damned if you do, you damned if you don't, because if you're moving a lot, you tend to get repetitive strain and hurt your back with lifting or whatever you need to do at work. Manufacturing included in that. And then if you're desk workers or sedentary or not moving as much, you have an equally high chance of having pain because sitting's the new smoking.
Yeah, I mean, I've been through your program twice, and honestly, I think the first time has a lot to do with sitting behind a desk almost 8 hours a day every day, you know. So you're seeing this across industries. What about seasonality? Like, you know, I think a lot about people get a lot of stuff done at the end of the year because, you know, they've met their deductible and out of pockets. You might have some of that, but like, is there a specific time of the year you see MSK claims spike, dip?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's interesting because some insurance companies capitalize on their calendar year and renewal schedule, but we've seen some insurance companies say, "Get your surgery in now. Your deductible is met, and it's going to reset." That's really like, I don't know. I'm so against that, obviously. But I think like we see surgery spike right before renewal because people met their deductible, and especially over the summer. So this webinar is very timely. But when people have more downtime, they tend to get their surgeries. So I would say there's two spikes we see, one during the summer and then one towards the end of the calendar year if they're on a 1/1 renewal.
And I'd imagine if your occupation is something like a school where you have the summers off, you could even see that spike even further because obviously people are home and they're doing stuff with their kids. And so I think the point of us talking about this is, you know, we'll get into a little bit more about this program, but as you're considering employers that are listening, implementing some sort of program, know that there are certain times that MSK can spike, summer towards the end of the plan year. And so, you know, if you're implementing something, you want to think about trying to hit that high portion. That's where you're going to have the biggest impact.
Yeah, and just to give you more,
okay.
Mike, there's large swings seasonality wise. Like we're talking average cost per head going from $5-10 per head to $200 a head. Like there's a really large range in the average cost over the calendar year. So I'm just kind of emphasizing if you can start a program during one of these spikes, you can really get a large ROI up front versus starting it another time of the year. So
yeah, and I would think that the vast majority of this is the wear and tear stuff, the non-acute stuff, because it kind of happens across the board, this seasonality. Like it's yes, it can be industry specific, particularly folks that have the summer off, but like almost always we see it at the end of the year.
Yeah.
All right, great. Well, let's
back fusion. Yeah, let's not something you want to pay for.
Yeah, exactly. Well, let's maybe hit the clinical side here just a little bit before we kind of dig into the aware health approach versus others approach. But let's just talk about, you mentioned, you know, an x-ray and looking at bone on bone. When do you think imaging is actually helpful when it comes to MSK?
Yeah. Well, I think when imaging is helpful is in that category of MSK that's not wear and tear. So if you have a fracture, knowing on x-ray you have a fracture is going to change the treatment plan. For wear and tear conditions, most of the time, unless there's a large red flag like numbness and tingling between your thighs with back pain, it's so rare that anybody presents like that. But unless there's a red flag, imaging does not guide the direction of treatment. So it's kind of like an expensive selfie if you want to think about it in that way.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think that's the point, right? Like surgery is one thing, and we know joint replacements can cost $20,000 to $80,000 depending on a lot of different things. But imaging is not an inexpensive thing either, and when it's happening at a high pace, that can add up significantly over time.
Yeah, and it's like not even just the cost of the image, it's that people with back pain, for example, are 3 times more likely to get surgery after getting an MRI. So there's the cost of the X-ray, maybe $100, the MRI maybe 2,000. But if both of them set somebody up for a surgery that's 50 to 150,000, then that's the thing you're trying to avoid. So I would say imaging is more dangerous for what it leads to than the actual cost of it.
Okay. Now, look, I know we're going to talk a lot about physical therapy because this is, you know, it's a cornerstone of the model we're talking about here today. You know, in those non-acute settings, are there certain conditions that respond better to physical therapy than others?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I would say there's a small percentage that respond to in-person versus virtual. And in those cases, we fly out on site to deliver care to that person's home or workplace. But I would say on that wear and tear side, I'm struggling to come up with one or two that are appropriate. So we're talking about like rotator cuff repairs that could be avoided. Like cleaning out your knee, like
Heidi, the one we talked about
surgeries.
was, I'd love to hear you talk about the scoliosis, right? Because I thought about that and I'm like, how could, like that requires surgery. That was my instantaneous thought. But talk about that one because I think it's an objection some clients might have and love for you to kind of talk about that.
Yeah. So yeah, scoliosis is a bit different than wear and tear. It's probably more, you know, congenital. But yeah, I think it's really interesting to lean into all the different types of conditions that physical therapy can help with. It can help with pelvic floor, so avoiding mesh surgeries that lift up the pelvic floor. It can help with scoliosis, where people think that how is telehealth going to help somebody with scoliosis? And really like showing people how to stretch opposite of that concavity on that side can really make a big functional difference. And people usually with scoliosis don't want to have a perfectly straight spine. They want to be functional and they don't want to be in pain. And so a lot of times you can treat that conservatively.
Oh, thanks for that. You mentioned something else. You mentioned pelvic floor, and it kind of spurred something in my mind because, you know, as we've been analyzing some mutual clients together, I think what surprised me a little bit was that it's not just the neck, back pain, the joint replacements that fall under the MSK category. It's a lot more than that.
Yeah. Yeah, like even migraines can lead to very expensive medications. So we're just looking at all claim spikes. We're not necessarily focused on only surgery. Even like vestibular dizziness can cause use of the medical system, ER visits that we're avoiding. We also treat like the distal finger joint. It's kind of like a knee. Most people don't realize that. It's not too different from some of the joints that you think about physical therapy treating. Even, you know, your toe pain, turf toe is so common, and people walk differently and end up getting their toe fused because of this. I've seen somebody on a benefits plan actually get surgery on multiple finger joints just to fuse them. And a lot of this can be managed with physical therapy. I would say arthritis and stenosis of the spine are the top ways we save employers money on their MSK spend.
Yeah, and that's stenosis is something you're going to see on your large claim list. Employers that'll that is something that'll pop up there. We're going to talk about, later in the presentation, collecting your data, and that's one of the things you'll want to look at to try to identify if you have an MSK problem is look at your large claims. Anybody on there that looks like they're having neck, back pain, pelvic floor issues, stenosis. Like, my guess is you look at your large claim list, you're probably going to see some of those on there. All right, I think maybe good time, Heidi, to let me just time check here. Okay, we're at about 11. Let's get into aware health and what a typical claim looks like before aware health and after aware health, so we can really start kind of focusing in on how you guys are eliminating these claims.
Yeah, so you can see on the right side, somebody has back pain, but let's just say they have shoulder pain for the sake of an example. So they could, on the left side, go to meet with their physician, see a specialist for their shoulder pain. They might undergo diagnostics like an MRI, and then the patient could, based on the MRI, say, all right, I want to get this fixed. I don't have time in my life to do anything else. So that's a very common pathway that we see. Another way that they could go is towards aware health if they happen to open the email from the HR and their benefits, which we know doesn't happen too often. So, so if they go the left route, which is probably the more common route, as soon as they see a physician, they'll start showing up in claims, and we get monthly claims and weekly pre-certs from all of our employers. So we start tracking them on our watch list and reaching out to them proactively, like, hey, did you get that email from HR? If not, you might not know this, but your employer is paying for this so that you don't have to pay for your MSK care. We'll even give you a gift card if you kind of use our off-ramp here. And so just for one visit, they get a gift card, but that visit is 10x better than the normal system because we're fast, we give them answers, we're personable. And so we meet them anywhere on this journey, and we keep trying to intercept until they come our direction. And once they're on our platform, to the right, you can see physical therapy. We have a 97% like erasing claims downstream from that point on, because
what'd you say there, Heidi?
If they see us at any point along the left path on our platform, from that point onward, they have a 97% chance of reducing imaging and surgery from that point onward. So we're very, very effective once they see us on our platform. So in this case with shoulder pain, what we would do is tell them, okay, you might say we intercept at the point of MRI. We might say to them, you have a rotator cuff tear on imaging, but we don't think that rotator cuff tear is causing your pain. And so what we can do is get your mobility back, get your strength back overhead. And so all of a sudden their shoulder feels great. They still have the fraying of their rotator cuff on the MRI, but it's their experience directly as they're getting better. So they start believing us that their pain's not from that rotator cuff tear. So then we're able to give them hope. Your body heals over time. We're healing machines, and we're avoiding that downstream surgery.
Okay. What I heard you say is that there's a little bit of misconception potentially of where the pain is coming from, right? You get the image, it shows a tear, so you naturally, and members, right, patients naturally think that, okay, that's the way to fix it. But you're saying even in a rotator cuff, the pain might be from what?
Degenerative. We have hair that turns gray over time. Our joints don't look the same over time. Our tendons fray over time. This is all normal wear and tear as we age. And most people with wear and tear do not experience pain with it. So it's really counterintuitive, because I had a gallbladder attack, and that imaging was so important for guiding treatment. I did a completely different treatment at the end with that information. So most of the time in the medical system, imaging is helpful. It's just in MSK, it's not. And so I don't know why it's taking 10 years for this research to kind of make it to clinical practice.
Yeah, that's really interesting, and I think it highlights the problem of what we're seeing today in the marketplace and just how people generally feel, right? You get the image, it shows something's broken, they give you a solution. Nobody ever talks about is that where the actual pain was coming from. It's just this big assumption that that's it. And you know, I remember going through the program for my shoulder, and honestly watching like two of my neighbor buddies go through shoulder surgery. Actually, three of them go through shoulder surgery, and watching what happened like in the following 6 months and how long it took them to get back up to normal. And I thought that was my case. I thought that's where I was going to be, and I was genuinely shocked and humbled when a few weeks later I was already starting to see improvements. I was just kind of letting that go, like I think a lot of people do. We just deal with the pain. We get so much going on in our lives as it is. You know, if you got kids, it's crazy. All right.
Mike, because why is it that you're surprised that you're getting better? And like, maybe it's because you weren't sure if physical therapy was going to work for you. But I think a lot of times, even without physical therapy, people get better over time. So when you have like 8, 9 out of 10 pain, people are like, I need to fix this now. I need to get an image now. I need to get surgery now. It's like, I think there's a certain element of just patience with our body and trust that we're healing machines and this is going to get better over time. So physical therapy in you know, from what the research shows, accelerates you getting better. But I think for the most part, what we're doing on our platform is just reminding people that they're healing machines and like sheltering them away from the system that makes low risk turn high risk.
That makes perfect sense. Okay, so you're mining the claims data, so you're getting in there. How quickly are you seeing ROI across the board on your clients? I mean, I can certainly speak to the ones that we have, but I'm curious from your overall book of business.
Yeah, I think that's a great question, because with wellness programs, it takes a year, 2 years to start seeing ROI to get ahead of chronic disease. For MSK, the ROI comes very fast in the first quarter of rolling something out with a self-insured group. And maybe, I don't know if it's the right time to play this video, but you can hear within a relatively like short period of time, we're switching these cases from like, oh, I was told I need imaging surgery to I don't need surgery. So you're able to erase that $60,000, $80,000 rotator cuff repair surgery off the claims in a relatively short amount of time.
Yeah, I actually think it's a really good opportunity. Let's play that video here. So, you know, for those in the audience, Heidi is talking about an actual example here for Robert, and so we're going to play a quick video here. It's a little muffled because there's some wind, but you'll be able to hear it. But take a listen.
Hi, my name's Robert. I just wanted to take a minute to give a big shout out to the Aware Health team. Having driven commercial vehicles, operating equipment over the past 30 plus years, it's really taken a toll on my shoulders and my neck. About 6 months ago, I was having a lot of pain. Went to the doctor. He said, take 800 milligrams ibuprofen. Here's a referral for an MRI. You're probably going to need surgery. I was like, oh, great. So I went home, was talking to my wife, said, hey, you should try this new program through our insurance called Aware Health. They might can help you. So I called them up, got an appointment. About 6 weeks ago, I started the program. It's been remarkable. I can raise my arm above my head. I can steer the forklift. I can steer the steering wheel. All these things 6 weeks ago I couldn't do. I mean, I had a dead arm. I was kind of doing the dinosaur thing. You know, that's all I could do. So anyway, just wanted to give them props. They really know what they're talking about. Great people, great program. Have a nice rest of your day.
So that's a real good example there. And honestly, like, felt like I went through something similar. I know Robert was a little league coach, and I play sports with my kids, and that's where it started with me. I was throwing a football, and I'm like, wow, I can only throw it at 20%, without having any pain.
One example of her shoulder, but for people that think they need to fuse their big toe, we get that mobility and range of motion back and help them walk again to extend that toe every time they take a step. If it's bone and bone for the knee, we explain to them the bone and bone is not the cause of your pain, and we're going to prove it to you. And they start feeling better. If it's degenerative meniscal tear, we tell them the time frame for tissue healing and basically show them the research if you were to go into surgery and the results. And so they choose conservative because it's faster, quite honestly, and they feel better 6 weeks or so after that. And then there's like tears of muscles and ligaments, like ACL tears. 80% of them conservatively can avoid that reconstruction. There's a fascinating study for an Achilles, like a calf tendon tear, where it was almost a complete tear on average in the group that was compared to conservative and doing surgery. And shockingly, the group that did conservative did just as good functionally as the one who had surgery. And these are like conditions I'd think, oh, you've got to have surgery for that, right? So it's just, I think research is challenging medical practice.
Yeah, that's interesting. I want to shift gears maybe a little bit here and talk a little bit about how we got our first client across the finish line, because I think it's fair to say I'm healthily skeptical whenever I'm reviewing and trying to put in a cost containment solution, because I want to make sure it works for my clients before I implement it. So I want to talk a little bit about the process that we went through for myself personally, but then our first client that we put together, because I think it'll lay out, I think it laid out a pretty good path for success, and is why we're having success right now. But, when I first met Heidi, we talked a lot. We went through contracts. We did all of that. And then Heidi offered for me to go through the program, as, I was having some issues, and I do like to go through any program I can, kind of try it out before I have my clients try it out. And given I had some issues, I did that. Well, we took a very, very similar approach with the first client that we implemented, and are now taking this approach going forward, which is we basically, to the HR team, to the C-suite, we said, if you have anybody on your team, right? Well, let me back up. First thing we did was identify that there was an issue, because there may not be an MSK issue in your plan today. I see it in the top 3 almost all the time, but it may not be the main driver of your health insurance plan. But that's what we kind of identified first, is that this was driving claims within the health insurance plan. So we do need to do something about it. And we piloted the program actually just with a couple of people, and we got enough positive feedback to then move that into a pilot phase. We piloted this for 2 months with the organization, with the intent of evaluating after 2 months to then turn this into a full-scale paid-for program. And I remember having our first meeting, and I was actually surprised, not from what you'd think. Like we had an avoided surgery already within 2 months. I was really hoping we would, but I think what surprised me was the amount of physical therapy visits that were happening already. And you got to think like these physical therapy visits, if you're a self-funded plan, fully insured, I mean, it doesn't matter. Like physical therapy is going to hit your plan and you're going to pay for it. And so essentially what we did was we diverted those physical therapies into this program. So we removed those claims from the plan. That right there paid for the program in the first month alone. So what we were showing was that the physical therapy coming off the health insurance plan was already paying for the program. And then on top of it, we had already identified a surgery that didn't need to happen. So after that point, that's when we rolled it out on a large scale. And I think that is a really good approach for employers to take, because there probably is a healthy skepticism, you know, about healthcare and about solutions and implementing those solutions. And so I would encourage employers out there to work with a partner who's going to allow you to try that out first, right? Get confident in your mind that this is going to work before you implement that for your entire population.
Mike, I think you were the most skeptical broker or advisor that I talked to, honestly, to date. Because I think I've talked to you for 2 years before you really understood, okay, like, how are you measuring your effectiveness? Like, how do you prove you avoided something that never happened? And you had to understand all of our methodology, like, you know, like the back of your hand, just really kind of seeing it in action with the pilot, with your group. And I don't know if it's safe to say we've won you over at this point, but there's so much proving yourself that has to happen up front, because people are used to solutions coming in and saying, trust us, you're saving, or, you know, throwing out ROI numbers that they're like, yeah, right. And so I almost like, I think one of our limitations is some of our numbers are hard to believe. Like, I keep checking our dashboards. They're really 98% avoidance downstream, 97, 96, 99. I keep checking it. It's like we had a meeting with our data engineering team. Like, I just want to make sure these numbers are right, because, you know, when not everybody sees this in our platform, but when they do, we're highly effective in erasing that downstream spend. So, you know, it's all automated claims ingestion. And when they get they intend to get surgery in year 1, maybe they don't get it in year 2, year 3, if it shows up, we subtract that from our savings that we say that we are giving the group, so that we're always putting our fees at risk. So whatever they pay, we guarantee at least a 1x ROI, where from a net perspective, they'll be revenue neutral.
Yeah, you know, that part right there, I think is what did it at the end of the day. You know, I started believing in the program because I went through it, obviously. But yeah, I mean, I think employers, you know, they get thrown solutions all the time. And a lot of times, you know, talking to prospective employers, I've seen a lot of solutions thrown out there, and then you go and you look at the utilization and you're like, wait, why do you have this why are you paying for this program? Nobody is actually utilizing this program. Okay, so if you think about like your biggest client, what are we talking in terms of savings here that you're seeing?
Yeah, so our largest client right now is 21,000. In terms of extent of savings, you could do the math for your own group, but on aggregate across our whole book of business, we are looking at trend lines. So what was their MSK cost before? What was their cost after our participation? And we look at that on a per member per month basis. So whether you're a dependent or employee in the program, the surgery costs the same to the plan. So we're looking at an average cost divided by the total MSK cost divided by the number of members in the group divided by 12 months to get an average cost per head per month. And so if you look at the baseline cost, we are reducing that cost. I say reducing loosely because our our services associated with that decrease in our book. We can't necessarily say we caused that decrease, but it matches up where we start a program and then that cost decreased $22 per member per month. So if you do 22 times the number of members in your group times 12 months, depending on the group size, that's a lot of saving. That could be shaving, 10-15% off your total healthcare spend.
Yeah, so for a group that has 500 members on the plan, you're talking about potential $132,000, and I'm going to say hard dollar savings, because there is a soft component that should not be underestimated with the amount of time that people are, spend out of work because they're getting surgeries and then having to go through an even more extensive physical therapy process because of that surgery. So great. All right. Let's talk about, from an HR perspective, what does implementation look like? What do they need to do? How involved do they need to be successful?
Well, I think HR is used to being told, well, our program's different. It's not going to require a lot from you. And then they roll out the program and it requires a lot from them. So I think there's a healthy skepticism when advisors bring a new idea to the group. Like,
Agreed.
I don't have time for that. I've got a million things on my plate and I don't want to prioritize this right now. I think HR tends not to think about the bottom line of the company as much as retention and making sure culturally that the employees are taken care of. And so it is a hard sell. And I think that's where the enthusiasm of the advisor really matters, is if the advisor is like, about it, it's probably not going to get implemented. But we know on our side, it takes like 15 minutes from HR a month, maybe forwarding a couple emails we ask them to send to their group, maybe sending an invite for a webinar link. But we do the lift, and we're getting really high engagement without HR owning this or feeling the onus of, like, is this going to look good on me? I'm going to bring this program in, and is it going to fail? And how's that going to make me feel? So we have every single pilot except one pilot has moved forward, and that one pilot was like, it was more of a budget. We're needing to see more claims history, so it was nothing related to us. But we know we have that confidence. Like, if we try this with your group, it's gonna work. And then the time investment's so low from HR, and part of that is we get claims data, develop watch lists, do all the proactive reach out on our side. We pay for the gift cards. Like, there's really no financial
gift card. What do you mean you pay for the gift cards? What do you mean there? Like,
yeah. So if a member is headed towards surgery, because we see the MRI show up in their watch list, like our claims data, then we're trying to reach them. Whether we have an on-site that we show up with the treatment table and say, come next week, we want to check out your shoulder or back, or maybe it's a text campaign that we do across a large group of members, but somehow we're interacting with them at each step so that we can off-ramp them to our platform, and we pay them $20, $30 Amazon gift card just for showing up for one visit. Sometimes we go as high as 50, but it's interesting. The higher you go, the more skeptical they become at some scam. So we try to keep them that low just for believability. But and some people have tax rules too that we have to comply with.
Gotcha. Yeah, no, that's interesting though. So, I mean, and that's what we found too, right? Like, there is not a ton of engagement from HR. Yeah, we need you. We probably need you in the pilot phase more than anything, and spreading the word. But Heidi's team, as she mentioned, actively mining claims data, and they get pre-cert reports from the carriers as well. And basically what pre-cert means is, when somebody has an elective procedure that needs to be pre-approved, Heidi's getting those reports in her team, so they know when someone is getting an MRI or could potentially be going into surgery. Because look, it does it takes gift cards sometimes, right? You got somebody that is already kind of committed to going down a surgical path. They've made that decision up in their mind. They're comfortable with it, and now we're asking them to do something different, right? And so there's a lot of creative ways that the team's been able to engage. Why would somebody choose this path, Heidi?
Well, I want to spend a little more time on why somebody wouldn't choose this path, because I think there's a lot of objections in people's minds. Like,
okay,
if you reach out to my members over phone, they're not going to pick up the phone. Like, how does this really work, right? But if you look at the math and say out of everybody we call on the watch list, even 3% engage with us. And of that 3% across 1,000, 5,000, 10,000 size group, if 97% of the time we're avoiding downstream costs and avoiding a $100,000 surgery, it doesn't take like off-ramping that many people going surgical route. So yes, the large majority don't pick up their phone, but the handful that we engage more than recoup the cost of the program, and you start to see a high ROI because these surgeries are so expensive. So I just wanted to spend a little bit more time on the objections, because if I were a self-insured employer, I'd have a lot of them.
Yeah, I agree. I totally agree. Are there certain approaches that are most effective, or is it a combination of everything?
Every employer is different, and so that's where you have like 10 strategies, try them out quickly. And I don't want to say that this is a program where HR can just completely ignore this program for a year and think that it will succeed. They could need to forward the emails, do the basic, right? Like respond to us if we're reaching out, or approving an on-site if we do all the work for it, but just kind of approving it. So there's just a basic level of commitment, but it's not time consuming and it's not difficult on their side. So I think the reason for doing this, to answer your first question, is there's no risk. There's no time risk. There's no financial risk. We prove ourselves, first of all, in the 2-month pilot. Is your member base engaging with us? And we know from that first email HR sends out if they are or not. And then if they engage with us, can we effectively turn these cases from surgical to non-surgical? We prove that in the first month or two, and then you can make a decision after that. Yes or no.
Yeah, well, and I'd add too that the way that we structure this program is we make it free for people. Again, you go back to that remodel benefits process, and how do you get people to do the things? Well, sometimes it's about just not putting a barrier in front of them, right? And the barrier would be a cost to do this program. So let's make it free so we can get people to do that. How is the engagement, Heidi? What are you seeing on average for engagement?
It's tough. I'm just being honest with you. We carry that load to get engagement from the group, not you as the advisor, not the HR department or the team on the group side. So I would say 80% of our activity in our company goes to getting engagement. So we have to get engagement, because otherwise we're paying groups back if we don't avoid enough surgeries. So we are fully committed and have probably the best system in the MSK arena for getting engagement to date. So what that looks like is trying to understand what motivates the members. And is it the email coming from HR versus us for HTML emails? Is it, like through text, through phone, through building watch lists and predicting the few that really going to make a difference in bending the inflation line that keeps going up twice as much as non-MSK cost? It's really understanding how people think about their pain. We started to say, sign up if you have pain. And the large majority of people were saying, you don't have pain. Like, I don't have time for this. I don't have pain. Men, women. And then we start talking to them and they're like, oh yeah, my knee doesn't move. And my shoulder's stiff. And I was like, that's why you would get a surgery, not necessarily pain. Like all of the ways that they describe their pain is so important to use in our messaging. So we're constantly iterating on all of that to speak to the member in their own words. And the value prop is not avoiding surgery for them. They think that's the quick fix. Like the value prop is getting rid of their pain quickly, or the convenience or not having to pay out of pocket for any of the care, like saving financially. So it's just like really interesting to me to understand the members' headspace and like, not force this on them, but like understand them and meet their needs and build a product and a service that's 10x better than what they are dealing with in the traditional system.
Gotcha. All right, thanks. We got a couple minutes here, Heidi. I'm gonna wrap us up. I'm gonna first hit on this. Employers, what can you do now? Like you to have some tactical steps you can take away from this. And the first thing I'd tell you, the first thing we did with our the client that we rolled out initially was understand your MSK impact. Look at your large claims. See if you can find those things in there. Identify what percent is MSK spend, and then ask yourself if you have a problem. Is it in the top 3? If it's in the top 3, you probably got a problem. That's the establishing control in the remodel benefits process, is understanding your data, and your broker should be helping you with this. But then once you get to evaluating solutions, ask some questions that I think will help guide you to better solutions. How does this reduce the cost of care? Have them prove it to you. How is this vendor paid? We want to understand what they're incented to do. More importantly, is their compensation aligned with outcomes? Will they put their fees at risk? That is what put it over the edge for me and Aware Health. This was a risk-free program. The client was guaranteed one-to-one ROI. Otherwise, they would get paid back. So you want a vendor partner that is going to do that on your behalf, is going to put their money where their mouth is. And that's a big step of the align process, and the reward process is how are you going to get members to use this? We'll make it free, right? There's a lot of waste within the healthcare system. Again, this is a pretty easy thing to identify. If you don't have this data, we can help you analyze it pretty quickly. Gonna head into questions. Feel free to throw some questions in the question box if you have any. Happy to answer questions now. Just a couple of other things. I would encourage you to connect with me and Heidi on LinkedIn. I post a ton of educational content out there, really to try to help employers take control of their health insurance costs. But if you want to walk through your plan data together, here's my contact information. Here's Heidi's contact information. Feel free to reach out. A couple other things here. Credit hours, here's your codes, HR, if you attended the event and you need these codes, and then save the date for May 13th. We will be talking about pharmacy. And let me see here. Yeah, I don't see any questions, so I think we can wrap this up. Heidi, big thank you to you for doing this. I know you're super busy growing your company now, and it's growing at a fast pace because of how effective you guys are. So thank you very much for joining me and joining Heidi today, folks. I hope this was helpful for you. You guys have a great rest of the day. Thanks.